Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 137 of the road to toucanchess.com. Today we are currently sitting at 1920, so let's jump into our 10-minute game for the day and see how we do. Now, as the game is going along, if you guys have any comments for how I could have played this one differently, definitely leave me a comment on down below. If you guys enjoy the video, hit the like button, and then finally, if you are not yet, subscribe to the channel, and that just helps me to make sure that you don't miss any of my future videos. So today we get the white pieces, hopefully, against this 1902 from India. They play the Carol, so we're going to play d4. I expect d5, and in this position, I'm going to stick with our tried and true fantasy variation with f3. Now, we've talked about this a lot in the series. Sometimes people will take, and that ends up in a lot of fun trappy lines. Sometimes we'll see e6, sometimes we'll see g6, which is what I like to play against the fantasy. And here, yeah, we see g6, which the idea oftentimes is going to be to play bishop to g7 and continue as such. So what I'm going to do is, eventually there's going to be some pressure on this pawn here. So I'm going to start with knight to c3, because our opponent very likely won't come and pin. There we see bishop to g7. So I think it makes sense to play the move bishop to e3, defending that pawn. If our opponent brings the knight out, we will probably push e5, and then I'll come back. Now this one, a little bit interesting. So knight to d7 first. Maybe ideas of coming here. So for now, I'm going to ignore it. Play queen to d2. Looking for this knight to come out. And our opponent takes in the center. So if they take in the center, we'll just play f captures e4. You see knight to b6. There's two attackers on this pawn, and there's only two defenders currently. So without seeing an immediate threat, I think it makes sense to just play the move knight to f3. You see knight to f6. Once again, this is still defended. What I could do here is I could play a move like bishop to d3. I somewhat like the move bishop to c4 if it wasn't for this knight, so I'll keep that in mind. And our opponent might try and bring their pieces in this way to have us lose a defender here. So for now, the move bishop to e2 actually looks fine, and maybe we castle and try and use this open up file. So all of our minor pieces are developed. Our rooks will be connected once we castle. And I think we've arrived in a fairly reasonable position at this point. Now castles would be an interesting move. I still think castles there is a fairly strong response. And this aims to get rid of one of my defenders. Now if I push forward, our opponent could go here. And neither side has committed to castling, so I'm here going to go ahead and play the move long castles. Need to be a little bit careful that the dark square bishop can't pin my queen to my king. And then potentially I bring my knight into the center of the board with maybe knight to e5, making sure I don't hang one of my center pawns after I go for this recapture here. Now if our opponent castles, I think a pretty immediate bishop to h6 looks good to me. This pawn gets a little bit weak, but we should be able to trade the dark square bishop before it gets taken. So opponent's taking a think. I feel completely fine about this position for now. But I'm always trying to, you do want to utilize, and something I don't think I've been doing as well recently is, figuring out, do I like what I've done with my position, and do I think it's going to be good for me in the next few moves. So here, I'm not going to pay too much attention to h5. I'm just going to bring my other rook in and try and create my attack. My opponent still hasn't moved their queen. They have not committed their king to either side just yet. This bishop is now kind of anchored in, but if I push, there's not the typical bishop to h5 ideas. Now, bishop to c8, I will admit, is a little bit odd. I didn't really expect that move. I don't think it's a fantastic move. So here I'm going to play knight to g5 and probably follow that up with move e5, because there's no good way for them to remove this knight, especially if I were to play a move like h4 myself, anchoring it in. So the knight comes in. That actually hangs a fork with knight captures f7. If our opponent takes, we can take back. And there's still going to be two defenders here. I'm going to go ahead, without too much thought, play knight captures f7. Because I have enough faith that this is a, at the very least, solid move that wins a pawn with another threat. Now, they could play knight captures h2, which hangs their queen. And after rook captures, I probably recapture, allow them to take, and their king is stuck in the center of the board. So they go for knight captures e3, which takes a bishop. If I take now, and they take a knight, I can just recapture. And I should win, and I lose an exchange. Essentially, I lose an exchange of a rook for an exchange of the queen. They may bring their bishop here. And if I take the knight now, the same thing happens. So let's play knight captures d8 first. We do see knight captures f1. I'm going to go with the rook captures f1. Their idea is bishop to h6. And here, I need to try and maximize what I'm getting out of this. If I just let them take, and we take back, then they can take the knight, and it'll be bishop, knight, and two rooks versus our rook. Instead, I could play the rook up to f4, keep my queen on. They can play a move. They can't play a move like e5, and I don't see a move that they can actually add a second attacker immediately. I suppose rook here is the idea. I didn't fully see this idea. I do need to take a moment. Rook here, rook to f8, queen d3. If they take, I get to move this. And maybe I've got myself into more trouble than I thought. But if I take the bishop and rook takes, then I do have knight to f7 attacking the rook. And it gets out, and then it's two knights, a bishop, and a rook versus two rooks, bishop, knight. Definitely messed up. Let's go rook to f4. King takes. Here I should have rook to king to d1, getting out of the pin, or at least getting the king out of the pin. And then I'll be able to play g3, so my opponent can't outright win the rook. I will say, I mean, I am impressed. I did not expect this attack. So it definitely feels like I've misplayed. The rook can't even come into attack because I take with check, which I think is a very nice counterpoint here. There's just no way for them to get in and attack yet. And what I'll have to do is I have to try and utilize this queen. So this comes in. I almost look to see if I have knight to b5, followed by queen to c3 check, and then saving my rook, which will give me queen, rook, bishop versus two bishops, the rook and the knight, which I don't think gives me enough. Very, very difficult here. Let's go with bishop to d3 for now. Rook comes in. I'm going to play knight to e2. There's still no e5. I'm going to have to try and maybe look at this line later to see what I could have done differently. So, king to e1, just moving out of the check. Obviously, our opponent can take. g3 is probably the next logical move. But lots of credit to our opponent where it's due is, like I said, they have created a very cool attack. I've never seen something like this. Or I've never had someone shred my my opening like this. Now they may take the exchange back, which does leave them up material. Because after bishop takes, pawn takes, they do not have rook takes yet. But what is my next move? What do I do? All right, so the rook comes in, coming after this pawn. I just play my queen over, and they take. Then it allows for me to take here. If I play queen to f2, I at least defend everything. And I put a second attacker here, which will force them to take the exchange. So let's go for that. Queen to f2. Two attackers on the rook. There are enough defenders. We finally see bishop captures, so we'll go g captures f4. And now I need to try and maybe neutralize as much of this attack as I can. I like that I have the center presence with the pawns. But there's still a lot to be decided in this position. Now if I push, I put pressure here. It does leave this hole. But for now, I think e5 is suitable because it puts my pawns on dark squares, and my queen still supports all of these. They may push with g5, after which point I don't really have a way to defend this. I can't really push. So there's g5. I go knight back, bishop takes here, rook takes, two attackers. If I push, pawn takes. I push, bishop takes, rook takes, I can come over, but this pawn's going to hang. Man, I just can't find a good move. Let's go queen g3. Gives up this pawn. My idea is probably h3. Rook comes in. Now, if I just play h3 right away, rook to f3 is a queen fork, a clean fork. So I'm just going to go bishop to e2. This at least stops rook to f3, gives up this pawn. But I'm running out of moves. I only have so many ideas here, to be honest. So the second rook comes in. Let's play rook, bishop captures g4. Now with this coming in, I don't want to come to the center. For now, I'll go queen to f3. Rook d to f4. Maybe queen to d3. Just trying to get my queen out of the position. Trying not to get mated by the two rooks. There's some interesting checks in the position. But I'm going to go with queen h7 first. Go knight to a4. Maybe knight to c5. I'm trying to find some way in. If I give this check, the king comes up. b4. King is forced to one of these squares, but the check doesn't look like it does a ton. Maybe I go knight to d7. Oh no, knight to d7, I don't have queen in anymore. I guess I have h4. King up. Go c3. They can take. Okay, don't panic. Knight captures e6. Let's take with on f4 first. Let's give this check on c3. And I am just going to try and make my opponent win this position on time. And right there, our opponent flags. So even in rapid, just playing fast, just trying to keep something moving is a way to win. And it's not clean, it's not pretty, but that's how we did it. So let's look at the game review and see how we did. So on today's date, we played bad. We played with a 67.5 and our opponent played with a 66.9. I thought we did pretty well out of the opening today. Although, as we saw, our opponent came up with lots of really nice tactics. In this position, I just thought we had a very clean control of center. Now, I probably should have considered the move e5 a little bit more to push in the center. I also could have developed this bishop to a more aggressive square like bishop to d3. And I even could have long castled, just getting my king out of the center. Now, apparently, the best move in the position is actually the move h3, which stops the knight from coming in and creating some of these issues in the first place. But instead, I did not find that. I played bishop to e2. We see bishop g4, long castles, h5, rook f1, and bishop c8 and knight g5. And already here, it's 2.6, so essentially saying we're up a piece when there's only been one pawn traded on the board. Now, knight g5 is fine. After knight to g4, we did find the best move with knight captures f7. But after knight captures e3, found the wrong move with knight captures e8. I think what I had to do here was I potentially had to take... No. Oh, I can take e3 now because there is no bishop to h6 because the queen defends and the knight defends. And this leaves these two squares still under attack. So after a move where the opponent moves their queen out of the way, knight captures rook, bishop captures, and then at this point I can probably even come in immediately with queen to h6, and I'm just completely crushing. However, once again, that did not happen. We saw knight captures, queen captures d8, knight captures f1, which I thought here they would probably play the move bishop to h6 first. And after we traded and we see bishop to h6, I did find the correct move with rook to f4, just sacrificing the rook, although it did take me 2 minutes to find this move. So we see king captures d8, king to d1. Here, I probably need to be more proactive about trying to get my queen moved with a move like g3. I also could have considered getting my bishop moved to get my knight over as well. But instead, king to d1, king c7, bishop to d3, bishop g4 check, king e1, rook hf8, and move g3, where I'm giving up the rook once again. But to keep the queen on, to give myself any chances, I had to find any way I could to do just that. So here, rook a to d8, queen f2, bishop captures, g captures, e6. And here, unfortunately, I made an error by playing the move e5. What I probably could have done is I considered the move bishop to e2 for a bit to try and trade off the bishops because this bishop is just kind of a dagger in my position. I had to find the move queen to h4 here, which threatens to infiltrate on e7 as well as put some pressure on the bishop. Now, I don't know if I could find queen to h4, but it was the idea. So e5, we see g5, queen g3, rook captures, and bishop to e2, where unfortunately we have to leave this pawn hanging, which our opponent punches, and we just fight on. Now here, this was kind of an example of trying to use the clock as a weapon. Here I probably should have played the move knight to a4. I was looking for a little bit at queen captures b7, but ultimately I couldn't quite see the correct way to go through in this position. The only move to maintain the advantage or maintain the equality is b4 to protect the knight, which then also threatens queen to b7. But king b6, knight d7, king b5, a4 check, king b4. And here there was a move to essentially win, and that was queen to e7. Now, once again, another very difficult move to find, where if our opponent takes here, we have the move b3 check, which wins the knight. But after our opponent came forward into our position, I did my best to keep things going. I traded off as much material as I could. And unfortunately here, after king to d1, they did just have the move knight to b2, which they missed. I probably needed to come back this direction and start running away and trying to escape the checks, although our opponent can constantly check us on this file. So after our opponent missed it, I sacrificed the queen into losing endgame, seeing my opponent had 3 seconds left on their clock, and knowing they can only take so many pawns and they would have to get to this h2 pawn for any chances, that I just moved quickly, and with 3 seconds left on our clock, we survive and our opponent unfortunately flags. But time is, time is part of the game, and unfortunately today, although it kind of put us in a bad position, we used it to win. And on that note, I will see you guys on the next episode.